Good morning. I'm going to talk to you today about sunflower insect updates. My name is Dr. Janet Knodel, professor and extension entomologist. So I'm going to focus on the most severe insect pests this last year, red sunflower seed weevil. This one is an annual pest of sunflower in South Dakota and North Dakota. And recently it's been very damaging. The larvae stage causes the damage by feeding on the kernels, usually consuming about a third of the kernel. This reduces seed weight and yield. And we primarily have depended on our foliar insecticides for management. Just a quick review of the life cycle. There's one generation per year. And let's start in the winter here down at the bottom. They overwinter as larvae that drop out of the seed in the fall. And then in the spring, they'll go through a pupal stage. Usually it's June through early July. And then the adults emerge from the pupa. And they will move towards sunflower fields or wild sunflowers and start to feed on pollen or nectar if they can find it, or florets. And they have a long emergence period. They live for about 53 days as adult weevils. And they're most attracted to the early blooming sunflower fields, and then they'll feed on the pollen and florets. It's most important for the female. She must have pollen before she becomes viable for egg laying. Then she'll move towards the seeds, chew a hole with her snout, and then turn around and lay an egg inside that seed. And she is viable for egg laying for 20 days. And usually it's a single egg that is laid inside the seed, and that hatches into a larvae in 1 week. And that feeds on the kernel and all the way through the fall. In the last National Sunflower Association Sunflower Survey 2021, we see weevils are very high in South Dakota. About almost 15% of the seeds had feeding injury on them. North Dakota was third place, 5%, and then Kansas second place. So it is very high right now. In our IPM crop survey for NDSU, you can see the weevil population. The red triangles indicates the threshold, which was 4 to 6 weevils on average per head. So you can see it's very high in the central region here and over in the east central. And this has become a elusive pest of sunflower. Here's a picture from South Dakota. You can see hundreds, if not thousands, if you could see the whole plant, of weevils on this sunflower. And we do become very concerned. We've had a lot of reports from farmers with pyrethroid failures to control weevils in South Dakota since 2017. And we've been doing research since 2020 on reduced pyrethroid susceptibility or resistance, which I'll show you some of the data that we have observed in South Dakota. And because of all this going on and other reasons for high persistent populations in central South Dakota, we'll discuss a little later why there's so many weevils in South Dakota. So the easiest way to summarize all of our bioassays that we've conducted for pyrethroid resistance in weevils is just showing you these pyrethroid resistance ratios, RR. Now, this is, we tested for S-Fen valerate, Asana XL, lambda-cyhalothrin, and Warrior. And the RR is the test population you want to test for resistance, South Dakota, or over a known susceptible population, North Dakota. So if your RR is less than 5, the population is considered susceptible. 5 to 10, moderately resistant. More than 10, highly resistant. So here's our results for the last 2 years in South Dakota. These are the 3 most common counties that we are finding with resistance. Everything in the red box indicates the weevils are highly resistant to the 2 pyrethroids we tested. In general, in 2021, we saw higher resistance levels for warrior. Here, this is the most west location in Meade County, near Sturgis, and you can see Espen valerate is moderately resistant, and lambda salhathorin is still susceptible there. So it looks like the further west you go, where there's less sunflower production, some of the pyrethroids may still work. Here's a map that summarizes all of our sampling sites and pyrethroid resistance levels that we have seen in red sunflower seed weevils in 2022. The red dot is the resistant ones, which you can see in South Dakota, especially in the central part of the state. The yellow is moderately resistant, and everything in green, you can see North Dakota's completely green, is still susceptible to resist pyrethroids. So just a summary, we have confirmed resistance in South Dakota, the red sunflower seed weevil to Asana and warrior, and the resistance ratios were higher for warrior in 2021. And we're just continuing to see more and more weevils in the fields in South Dakota. And sometimes the growers had to spray up to 4 times to try and control them. So we have this dark cloud on the horizon here that's been here for a while, and growers are wondering what to do about how to manage these resistant weevils in South Dakota. So let's take a look at the insecticides, because they have been our #1 go-to. So we really just have the pyrethroids group 3A. There's numerous products that are registered. Then there is the carbamate 7, and then a premix besiege, which is 2 active ingredients, coragen group 28 and warrior 3A. But we really don't recommend them because 7 doesn't work. I'll show you data on that. And besiege is a premix with coragen, which does nothing for weevils. So you're relying on a lower active ingredient of warrior to control them, which lower rates usually do not work well with resistance. So here we have our treatments that we tested both in South Dakota and North Dakota. In North Dakota, we were at the Castleton Agronomy Farm. And here's the pyrethroids we tested. We had 4 different products. And then here's the 7, carbamate 1A, and then 2 organophosphates, thymate and malathion 1B. And then we added in exponent, which is a synergist to the pyrethroids to see if we could make these pyrethroids hotter and control the weevils. And then we tried a new one, Vantacor MSO, that's been highly recommended for grasshopper control now, a diamine group 28. And then Entrust SC, spinosad 5, and Nemex, a botanical, which is the active ingredient, isodoractin from the tree grown in India. And just a little bit about exponent. There's one from Valent and a few other companies, but it's supposed to make the insecticide hotter or more efficacious. The active ingredient is piperobutoxide, PBO, and it inhibits the misfunction oxidate system, so that will make the insecticide hotter. And it's very much used in extending resistance. So here's some of our data. You can see everything in the large box, red box here are the treatments that were not effectively different from the untreated check. You can see also that we had very low levels of weevil damaged seed, 3.8%. And here's 7 right next to the untreated check. Another reason you don't want to use 7 is because it's very toxic to honeybees. And then here's the small box, shows you all the insecticides that were significantly different from the untreated check. Here's all of our pyrethroids in this first bracket. And here's the PPO exponent added in, which did help lower the percent damaged seed. And then here's our entrust, which looks very promising. So because of the low level of weevils in the plot and amount of damage, we did have the lowest yield in the untreated check, but there was no significant difference in yield. And we're still counting weevil seeds for South Dakota data, so that data is not available yet. But we did get a good relationship between test weight, pounds per bushel, and percent weevil damaged seeds. The ones over on your right side are all the ones that were not significantly different from the untreated check. And over here you can see with the higher test weight and lower damaged seed, all the ones that were more significant. So just to summarize, we do think Entrust SC or spinosad is going to be maybe a good product to get in sunflowers for weevil control. It was comparable to the pyrethroid efficacy, and it's a new mode of action, group 5. Exponent did increase the efficacy of the pyrethroids about 10 to 15%. So it may be helpful in mitigating pyrethroid resistant weevils in South Dakota. One of the negatives is this expense, $4 to $12 more per acre when you add it in. You need to look at the label to see how much you need for each different product. In North Dakota, I don't think we'll recover the cost of exponent if we have low weevil pressure, so I wouldn't recommend it. And we're continuing to evaluate insecticides this upcoming year. One of the new ones we're excited about is from Syngenta Crop Protection, Panazoline. It's a group 30 isoxylenes, so it is a new group. It's a GABA receptor antagonist. So GABA is a neurotransmitter in your brain. And again, they're kind of targeting pests that have developed resistance to other insecticides with this chemistry. So it's going to be exciting to get this into sunflower. I'm not able to show you the data, but we did test it in the glass vial bioassays this last year. And it looked excellent. It worked both in South Dakota and North Dakota weevils. So the pyrethroid resistant ones in South Dakota, it did knock them dead. And we're going to continue to work with Syngenta on this because we really need another mode of action. And hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, we can get that. There's an IR4 project underway to get residual data in sunflower. So there is hope for the long-term future. But why are the weevils so high? Well, we are seeing resistance and everybody's spraying multiple times with pyrethroids. So that just increases the level of resistance. And then there's warmer winters that we're seeing, which increases survival of overwintering weevils. And then sunflower production so concentrated in South Dakota, and it's gone up from 2012. You can see all the sunflower fields in Sully County here. They're close together and very concentrated. So it's easy for weevils to find fields to feed in. And the South Dakota growers use a very late planting date in June. And they're increasing their risk to red sunflower seed weevil because of that. There's research dating back to the 1980s that says, you know, late planting date favors red sunflower seed weevil development. Again, we can do this through IPM, Integrated Pest Management. Know your pest biology, when it's out, when you need to scout, when the crop is susceptible. Scout your fields regularly. And you want to do that through yellow rare petals through R5.7, Nawaka W pattern in your field. Avoid the edges. That's where the weevils are most concentrated. And then count the number of weevils on 5 plants at 5 different sites. For 25 plants total, calculate your average, and then use that threshold. And last year it was about 4 to 6. And then we always want you to rotate modes of action, especially when we have known insecticide resistance. You know, if you're putting on more than one application. Unfortunately, that's not feasible right now for sunflower growers. They only have one mode of action, pyrethroid 3A. So we got to reach into our IPM toolbox and maybe use some other strategies like cultural control, planting date. You know, early to mid-May is better than June. Here's some data from Dr. Persiska, a sunflower entomologist at the USDA ARS, and it shows weevil damage is much lower in May compared to late June. And here's some of his data again from South Dakota, Dakota Lakes Research Farm in Hughes County. High weevil levels there. And you can see late or mid-June here, 17th, 96% of the seeds damaged. June 3rd, 51%. And May 27th, 23%. So I would really encourage, if you're in South Dakota, start planting earlier. We usually try to get our sunflowers in mid to late May here in North Dakota. Now last year it was a late year because we had a lot of moisture and cool spring. So some did go in early June. But again, this is going to help reduce the weevil populations overall. We need everything we could get right now. And I'd like to thank my team and the National Sunflower Association and all the chemical companies that helped us out.